mean, that's what it's all about. We good? Understood. I got the green light, got the thumbs up, so it must be time for another episode of the Creatives Crowns Talk Show. Welcome back, everybody. Again, we are here to speak up and speak to all our artists, creatives, entrepreneurs in and around the Carolinas and beyond. And we're so happy to have you all back. Shout out Miss Label Production in the back. Of course, we got Evan the Third. Of course, we got Nick Will in the back. And of course, this whole thing is powered by, for artists, by artists. Again, another platform here to support, show love, and showcase our artists in the scene. Of course, we do our open mic every Thursday at Common Market South End. Make sure you tap in with us. And we are here to speak with a very, very fond friend of mine. I've been grateful to know him for a few years in our publication sector of our city. It's been dope to hear this man's words and read this man's words on print over the years and just get to know him and have him speak on a lot of our creatives, a lot of our artists and our entrepreneurs in this city, as he's done it for almost, I feel like damn near a decade at this point, if not longer. Listen, I need y'all to put your hands together for my homie, the one and only Ryan Pitkin. Ryan, what's up, sir? How you living?
Man?
How you living?
I appreciate you having me, Faze.
Of course.
It's been a while, man. It's been probably about 10 years since I met you. 2015, 2016, back in the creative loafing days, and we're now just pushing forward on our 8th year at Queen City Nerve.
Wow.
So yeah, just this is what I live and die for, is sort of Charlotte's creative scene and arts and culture, and that includes news, food, all the things that we cover, and we'll get deeper into that as we go. But yeah, man, it's been real, and I appreciate yourself. I'm familiar with Nick's work. We've covered a lot of it. It's a lot of sort of just working together to highlight people in the scene, because Charlotte is one of the strongest creative cultures that there is in the South, in the country, and it's just important to get that word out there.
Absolutely.
Because it can be a bubble sometimes.
100%. And I think that's just the biggest sentiment of this entire show. It's like getting the word out, speaking, and just having the conversations, not just with creators, but of course with artists and the people behind the scenes and around. So again, man, I'm just grateful for you, your time, and the time that you've done, because you bring up the sheer fact you brought it up is a throwback in itself. Creative loafing loafing is definitely one of our older paper prints for all information that we had in and around the city. And of course we will talk a little bit more about them, but that's how I got to know you, got familiar with you by way of Mark Kemp, who was another journalist on that print. Shout out Mark Kemp, definitely one of the homies. But with that being said,
I just got to catch up with him the other day.
Really? How's he doing?
I had a phone call. He's great, man. He's living with his wife and his stepkids and just moving in all together and doing his thing. I don't know what he shares personally, but just the fact that we hadn't been in touch in a while, and I hated that. So we finally got to catch up, because he was a force in this scene.
Yes.
He's no longer in Charlotte, but he is his impact is still felt for sure.
It is for sure, and by way you, because I mean, if it wasn't for you and Mark, what you guys were able to create at Creative Loafing and by way Queen City Nerve is basically kind of one of those first outlets to be seen as an artist, especially when I was coming up, and I'll go ahead and give this little quick story before. But when I was coming up as an artist, I would love reading Creative Loafing. Creative Loafing, again, is the alt mag that we had in the city, and just reading just the local news. Everybody was keeping up with just the local news, the local shows, artists, the local politics that were going on. But of course, me being the artist, I wanted to know what was going on with the music in the city. That was I think one of my first direct lines to just information in the city was that Creative Loafing. And again, you guys are writing about artists in the city, around the city. I remember I have to get into Creative Loafing. I needed to be written about. Who doesn't want to be in your local paper? That really was one of the big things that I think artists back then wanted to be a part of. And I think that kind of goes to speak about how powerful print media was and still is, because again, that's just one of the biggest things, is to have that in your hands and reading it and seeing your name in paper print. It's just a different feeling. So with that being said, and getting that prelude out the way, Ryan, I didn't do you the service of just really letting the people know who you are, what you do. So again, kind of give us a rundown again of who you are, what you've done for us, and what you do here in the city of Charlotte.
Right. So right now, currently founder and editor-in-chief of Queen City Nerve. That's my life and what I spend most of my time doing. Queen City Nerve is a biweekly alternative paper here in Charlotte. We cover news, arts, music, local music only. We do some concert reviews here and there because we have a photographer who goes to those, and he's Jeff Haynes, shout out to him. He's from the Creative Loafing days as well, but he's nice enough to share some of his leftovers when he goes and strings it out for some of the national outlets, and then we run his photos. But for the most part, when we're doing stories and reporting and things like that, we are covering local music, straight up arts, local food, local owned food establishments, and hyper localized news. So we have a real hyper focus on what's happening in the Charlotte area, and we don't spend a lot of time worrying about the outside stuff unless we can tie it in to what's happening in Charlotte, on the streets of Charlotte. We try to tell untold stories. We sort of go into it's a cliche at this point for kids learning journalism, but it is true that you get into journalism because you want to be a voice for the voiceless. Mm-hmm. And we really take that seriously at Queen City Nerve in terms of not so much trying to highlight what the banks are doing or this and that, but what the people on the streets are doing at a grassroots level. And that's just, that ties into our arts coverage, our music coverage, our news coverage, our food coverage. All of it is really just trying to be a voice for underrepresented folks. And we think that local artists are underrepresented folks in terms of the highlights that they get. You know, you hear about what big artist is going to play at Bank of America mm-hmm. Stadium, and it might make news on all the different channels. But we're more excited about, you know, what's going on at Vapa Center, for example. Yep. You know, what's happening at Independent Picture House on a local level, what's going on, all these different scenes and venues that can sort of, you know as well as I do, that can sometimes operate as silos, mm-hmm. and really getting that word out about what people are doing in different spots and different spaces is an important way of trying to connect those silos. Absolutely. For sure. And that's sort of what I see. Major part of our arts and culture coverage. That's the job. That's the mission behind it.
Absolutely. So where does your journalism story start as far as where you get going?
I actually can tell. I can put it down to the day, the
minute
where it happened.
Yeah, let's do it.
So I was at CPCC, just sort of catching back up with schooling. I had taken some years off. I was cleaning carpets full time after high school. I barely passed through high school. Was never a really tuned in student. Like I was just, I knew that I was smart, but I never knew what I wanted to do, so I didn't really pay a lot of attention. I was skipping school a lot in high school and whatnot. I had a bad accident, shattered my hip when I was 20, and I had been out of high school for a couple of years and just decided I'm going to go back to CP and see if I'm going to do something with my life. And randomly took a journalism class because it was an elective that was available. And I had known about journalism, but I had been a creative writer my whole life.
Oh, sure.
Or through my childhood, I was writing a lot of poetry all the time, and I just viewed journalism as being sort of square. Everybody writes exactly the same. You have no voice in journalism. Mm-hmm. That was my wrong opinion. And I took a journalism class just to see what it was about. And about halfway through that class, my instructor, Liz Rogers, who I'm still in touch with today, shout out to her. She's still at CP, I believe, but she took me aside one day and was like, "You're really good at this, and you should think about it as a career." Around that same time, I was discovering people like Hunter S. Thompson and journalists who had made a voice for themselves and starting to realize, oh, you can be a journalist and tell stories in your voice without just being AP style, inverted pyramid, all the little things that you learn that makes you the same as everybody else. Absolutely. You can have make your own lane in that. So Liz Rogers sent me to go on assignment, my first assignment, which was like for the CP newsletter. They didn't even have a newspaper there. It was like a newsletter that would go to just instructors alone, I believe. And it was to go, you ever heard of Body Works? It's like an exhibit. It was at Discovery Place where they use actual human bodies.
Yeah, I got you.
And like split their muscles up and do all sorts of different displays. So the man who created that whole entire science behind that exhibit was named Gunther von Hagens. He's from Eastern Europe. He was going to be in town for one day, and he only agreed to do student journalism interviews. So my assignment was basically just go walk through this exhibit and go meet up with him above in the corporate office at Discovery Place and talk to him for 30 minutes. And I remember coming around 277 like exiting the infamous, approaching the infamous exit 3A and looking at the skyline on my left and just thinking like, oh, this is what journalism is. You get to go experience stuff that you wouldn't otherwise get to experience. And then you get to share that with people. Like that's something to do for a living.
That's
and I was like, from that point on, I was all the way in and just made it my life, and made it my pursuit. Ended up transferring, going to, got my, whatever it's called, the degree that you get at CP.
For sure. Got you. Yeah.
Associates. Got the associates, then went on to UNC Charlotte, got my bachelor's degree there, graduated cum laude. I don't think I ever made lower than a B once I made that sort of realization of just locking in and having a goal for myself. And it was during my time actually still at CP before I even moved over that I interned at Creative Loafing and really got familiar with what that world is. And, like having discovering some of these alt journalists, people like Hunter S. Thompson, at the same time that I'm discovering what the alt weekly world is and what it means and what it represents, was really just sort of eye-opening to me as to like what the possibilities of journalism, not just being the straight up, square news that you might see. I remember during my interview with Kim Lawson, who was my editor and really a huge mentor for me and a reason that I was able to be successful in this field. But this is my obviously first time meeting her. I was interviewing to become an intern at Creative Loafing, and she asked, where do you see yourself in 5 or 10 years? And I said, Charlotte Observer, because I just figured that's what you do as a journalist. You're in Charlotte. That's the newspaper. And her response was, she just sort of looked down. She goes, all right, we'll fix that.
That's
and
hard. Yeah,
I didn't know what she meant at the time, but it was luckily I got the internship. That was 2008. And I was just really sucked into that culture of what an alt weekly represents as far as representing some of the untold stories in your city.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit more about that alt weekly papers, because Creative Loafing has been a staple just growing up in the city of Charlotte. Like again,
1987.
That's insane. I wasn't even aware. So it's just been that staple. It's just always something that's kind of always been around, especially again when I've been coming up, that you can read and really get that handle on kind of what's going on around the city. So you are interning at Creative Loafing. What is that like interning and making that transition?
Yeah, it was really cool just to see how these people were. At that point, and now it's just part of my life, and it's just the way I think about everything that's happening around me. But at that point, I just didn't understand how you could come to work every day and think of new stories to tell or find new stories to tell. And I wasn't aware of I didn't have all the connections I did. So just watching the way that these people worked their connections or sniffed out a story, decided they got people emailing them, or I'm not even going to lie to you. When I was there, this is 2008. So you might not even believe me, but they still had a fax machine. So that's where everybody got their show information in. So now you book a show, let's say a Mislabeled Productions, 10,000 hours of show. Wish you were here. You're going to put it on all the social media. You're going to send it over email to people. At that point, email was still was obviously already a thing in 2008, but every band in every venue, milestone, what have you, they were sending faxes. And I was in charge of doing the sound wave, which was just a listing of every show in the city. And that's how I did it. It was just a pile of papers with band names and where they were going to be playing. So just watching how people operated that environment in the way that they were able to. Sharice Hodges was the news editor at that point. I really watched her a lot. Just sort of develop a nose for what makes something newsworthy, why it's worth telling, things like that, is what I learned there. And it was really just a great experience. I couldn't imagine interning anywhere else having that sort of experience.
Absolutely. What would you say, working at alt weekly paper, what would you say is the biggest difference between that and possibly working at a more bigger syndicated paper?
It's interesting, man, because it's evolving all the time in news. And I talk about this with my business partner, Justin, our publisher, Justin LaFrancois, all the time. What does make an alt weekly anymore in these days? Because when we started in 2008, Creative Loafing was really the only people talking about LGBTQ issues. There was some sort of Black Lives Matter before Black Lives Matter situations in Charlotte, police killings. Jonathan Farrell was one of them, where I was really covering that closely. But most news stations were, but we were sort of, getting connected with the local activists that's sort of where I cut my teeth, was in the activist world and covering local activism, whether it be, policing or governmental or grass environmental. I did a lot of that. Occupy Charlotte was happening when I first became a journalist, and that was some of the first things I covered was Occupy Charlotte, which was sort of environmental, but also a lot of different issues. But basically, like, really locking in with those folks and telling their stories in a way that we felt like needed to be told, as opposed to, these are just some young folks that are out in the grass at the courthouse. Let's ask Duke Energy who they're protesting against, what they think about it. It just feels like a lot of mainstream journalism is more about the powers that be. Let's get an interview with the top person at Bank of America and see what their thoughts are on this and how it affects our economy, when we really want to talk at an alt weekly to the folks who are on the ground fighting, pushing back against that, and trying to create new narratives against the harmful ones.
100%, absolutely. When you are going out in the field and really tapping into the community, where are you getting the leads from? Are you just cold calling people? I know you said boots on the ground. You just kind of hanging around till the information comes. Like, what's the best way that you guys are receiving information to relay in the alt weeklies that you do?
So like today, you mean, or like when I was first starting? Like just when I was first starting, I had zero network, and I was sort of just, it was left up to me to sort of, I will say, I had a mentor named Rhiannon who was already covering Occupy Charlotte at that time. She sort of, I wrote a story about her covering that for the UNC Charlotte paper, Niner Times. So I profiled the journalist profiling the movement and was able to meet some people through there. I met up with some other journalists. Grant Baldwin was is still a photographer in the city who was shooting all these different activist marches that were happening. So eventually you just make connections with these people, and then they let you know these things are happening. And through that, activists are sort of the prism through which the light shines, in which they connect you with maybe a family who's going through something that's being impacted by some policies here in Charlotte, things that they find and are fighting for. Then you can get the connections through them. And it's really just about building up that network, and building trust with your readers is the number 2 thing through that. And it actually becomes the most important thing, where you are known through the city as someone who's going to cover something correctly. And then when that's the case, then when someone is looking for someone to tell a story, they're going to come to you and say, I believe that you are, I trust you with sort of this story that can really impact my life by going public with it or something. Like just 2 weeks ago, I was writing about, I guess it's been a month now. I don't know. What is time anymore?
What is time anymore? Talk to him.
But just like a month ago, I was writing a story about a Ukrainian family who has been targeted by ICE. Their father of the family has been taken into custody, and they're going to be deported, or at least they're aiming to deport this entire family, let alone just the father, which will put the 2 teenage boys probably on the front lines of a war, and make the father a political prisoner because he's spoken out against said war. So this is a sort of thing where it's really sensitive. And you have to really take this seriously when you're sharing someone's story like that, and not be like a throwaway, like, all right, here's what happened. Like I go and spend time with these people in their house and really learn what this means to them and what it feels like to know that you're at this precipice in your life where things could really go bad, and telling that in a respectful manner, as opposed to looking at them as content or something like that. And I sort of digress from the actual subject of your question, which was how do you connect with people? But it's important to tell those stories respectfully, and then people know that you're someone that you can come to tell their story. 100%. It sort of builds on itself in that way.
Absolutely. And I always think that there's a certain more authenticity that you bring, because again, you guys are boots on the ground, are legitimate neighbors. I think that's one of the coolest things is that we will see the writers of our all weeklies at the events. Right. Not even just as people to write down a story, but hey, they're enjoying, they're in the crowd, they're kicking it, and that's what I'm saying. That's the biggest thing, because like, it just brings that authentic feels. Like I was just rubbing shoulders with Ryan last week. I can understand and see where he's coming from this article. So absolutely 100%. So let's go back to working at Creative Loafing. Describe your stint working at your first all weekly, and how was doing that.
So I was first as a sort of a freelancer there. I wrote a lot of news stories for them. I did like a long form story on Hidden Valley, for example. Do you remember when like Hidden Valley was the subject of a Gangland show on History Channel and things? And so I did like a long form about that whole situation, pieces like that, and that's sort of how I kept tuned in with the staff there. And then I got my first full-time writing gig, which was at Union County Weekly, and that's a very small-time community newspaper. You're covering Waxhaw, Weddington, Wesley Chapel, Marvin. There's a couple other there, Indian Trail, Stallings, and those towns. So every night I'm going to a different city council meeting, and these people are really. It's a really great way to learn how to be a news reporter, but it's just it doesn't feel as impactful. It does for these people, and that's why I took it very seriously. But like you're sitting there, I remember being at Marvin Town Council meeting in this trailer at like 11 at night because they hadn't built their town hall yet. And these people are screaming at each other about where this speed bump is going to go, on this side of the street or on that side of the street. Absolutely. And it matters to these people because they drive on that side down there and these people cut through the other side. And it's just like, golly, like it can really just wear on you. But it's also just a great way to learn how to do news reporting. So then that same person I mentioned earlier, Kim Lawson, she reached out to me and she's like, I'm moving to Georgia. You're the only person I would endorse to take my job. Which I wasn't technically taking her job. She was the managing editor over everything, but she wanted me to take over as news editor and fill the hole as people moved up. And I was just like, yes, please get me back in Charlotte, get me back in the alt weekly world. Cannot take that drive down 74 again, because like every night I was going to city council meeting. You have to go all the way down 74 through that traffic. So then I took the full-time job as a news editor at Creative Loafing, and that's when I really started to sort of cover the community here and really focus in on community journalism. I was able to, this is before that, in 2012 I was brought on for a 2-week stint covering the DNC. We had about 4 staffers who were in charge of that, or who were covering that, and my job was the activism. Gotcha. So I was outside of I didn't see any of the speeches. I was outside covering. There was marches nonstop all the time outside of the Spectrum Center and throughout the whole city. So I was just covering different marches, different protests, different rallies, and that was a really cool experience. Just sort of nonstop feeling like this is my job. Like Absolutely. I'm doing this. I had just graduated college in 2012. That was my first time really feeling like I was doing something for a job. Went through Union County Weekly, came back to Creative Loafing, and that's where I was when that got shut down. So I was there 2015 as news editor, and then right in 2018, I took the spot as editor-in-chief about 2 months before our publisher, who lived in Greensboro, came down with no warning whatsoever and just sort of shut the whole operation down. But before that, within those 4 years, I was there in 2017 to cover the 30-year anniversary of Creative Loafing. That was a really cool experience in doing that right, because we brought back columnists from the 90s and the 80s and people who were doing like the blotter, the crime blotter, who were writing that in 2017 or doing like political columns back then, connecting with columnists now, the nightlife writer from the 90s talking to Aaron Spruill, who does our nightlife writing now, and just really doing that sort of generational bridge was really a cool experience. That was one of my favorite parts of that stint there at Creative Loafing for the 4 years that I was there, 3 to 4 years.
Got you. Absolutely. Absolutely. I got you. Well, since you brought it up, let's get your perspective on kind of the implosion of Creative Loafing, because that actually was kind of a big deal. Again, you're talking about a legacy that was kind of in the city, and then just kind of out of nowhere, just kind of quickly fell apart. Can you kind of just regale us on kind of how that whole situation happened?
Yeah, we had no warning. We were just putting together a paper like we always do. That was weekly, which blows my mind. Creative Loafing was weekly because I don't know how we did that. And so we were putting our weekly paper out, sending it to the printer, and Charles, the name of our publisher, he lived in Greensboro. He also runs Yes Weekly, which is still a paper up there in the Triad. He sort of texted and was like, "Did you send the paper yet?" We're like, "Yeah." That's a normal thing for him to text. And then our emails all shut off like immediately. We were like, "Damn, that's weird." And then he shows up at the door like knocking, and he's never in the city. So we were like, "That's not good." So he just sits us down. He had like 3 lawyers with him, and he was just like, this is no longer financially feasible. We've been trying to make it work. We can't anymore. There was no severance package. There was no warning. There was no give you one more paper to make, try to look for a job. It was just, you have like 30 minutes. I think they gave us
That's
maybe
crazy.
an hour to clear out everything from your desk that you've compiled there over your time here. And you got to be out of this building and we're going to lock it up. So, you know, I was never in the business side of things or viewing things, but some of our folks who were on the ad side of things and got to see the numbers and the financials were, you know, viewing things that they felt like were ruining us financially, that he was doing on his own personal, should have been on his personal finances. Yeah, I don't want to get you too specific because I don't know the details and I don't want to get sued.
For sure.
But it was just things that they saw that they were like, oh, if we didn't have this on our bill, on our sheets, we could make this paper work in some other world. And if we were to be independent with this. So, you know, that news broke. It was really a shocker to us how much of a wave it created of support.
Yeah.
It went national because people always sort of hear about these, when they hear about a publication closing, it'll go sort of national. But just in our city, of the people who actually knew what we were doing and really loved us, that was one of those things where it's like you can start to feel like you're screaming into a void when you're just putting paper after paper after paper out and people expect it. And there wasn't a lot of social media engagement, not a lot of internet readership with Creative Loafing. And I take that on me. Like we would just put like the 5 stories from the paper up the day the paper came out and not touch the website for the rest of the week. We didn't really do online reporting like that, like we do at Queen City Nerve. So it would just sort of feel like you're just putting the paper out. You don't get a lot of feedback. You're just working on the next week's paper immediately. So that when we shut down and that response that came from the city of how much of a beloved institution that was, and not just like because it was around for 31 years, but because of what we were doing then. The stories we were reporting on week by week in that moment and how much people were relying on that. It really showed us the need in the city for it. And we were at Solstice Tavern, RIP to that place. That place was awesome. Yeah. We sort of hung out there that day, got quite drunk on the tab of a GoFundMe that was going around the whole country. Sick. People like, buy us a drink, GoFundMe or whatever. It wasn't misused. We told them straight up, we're at the bar. If you want to support us, we're here. We have no severance. Yeah. And we did use it to split it up amongst us for some sort of severance after we paid our tabs. But, we were just there sort of commiserating, and a lot of supporters came and met us there on the back patio, and we just sort of made a night of it. And that was really just a meaningful, not just there at Solstice, but the whole outpouring happening over social media and the way people showed how much they cared about us. It really stuck with us. And we found ourselves in an opportunity literally, I think, the next day with some silent investors who wanted to reach out and say, this is the fastest growing city in the Southeast. It can't not have an alt weekly. Someone's going to fill that vacuum.
Absolutely.
We would like to fund you all to do that.
Wow.
And would you be interested? So it was me as the editor-in-chief and Justin LaFrancois, who was the sales manager there. And him and I just sort of talked about it, woke up with a hangover that next day, and we were trying to discuss what should we do? Will this be worth it? We had to dedicate our life to really making this happen, creating a paper from scratch. And within, I'd say 24 to 48 hours after that, we gave it the green light. We announced it just immediately, which was stupid because we were like, we're going to come out by December 7th, which was, I think, the city of Charlotte's 250th birthday or 200 and maybe it was city of Charlotte's birthday. I don't know what year, but we were like, by December 7th, we're going to have a paper. Now this happened on October 31st. That was when we were all laid off. It was Halloween night. So that's literally like a month and a week.
Exactly.
To give yourself to create something from scratch. And it was just like 20 hours, not even exaggerating when I say like 20-hour days after that with me and Justin and our team members at that point, Courtney, Dana, Pat Moran, who are all helping us just sort of create something from nothing. And it was hectic as hell, man, but we put one out.
Absolutely.
We put one out on December 5th, 2020 or 2018. And that's been, we haven't missed one since, unless we take a break for holidays sometimes.
Absolutely.
But we have not put out a paper. We have not stopped putting out papers since.
That's amazing. Absolutely. Did you feel like you all lost any kind of footing in between that transition?
I mean, yes, major. Yeah. I mean, there were discussions of once Creative Loafing, like they did a thing where they saw what we were doing and then they tried to come back like 6 months later with
about to ask,
Publisher's Son. And that was just that was just a miss.
Absolutely, a miss. Yeah,
just a huge swing and a miss. They put out a couple papers that were basically just the same content from their Yes Weekly up in Greensboro, and not really anything new to Charlotte, and people saw through it. But our discussion was had with our investors like 6 months into that. Once they gave up on that whole idea, like, should we buy that name brand back from them so that we can be Creative Loafing again? And by that point, we had really started to build a name as an independent newspaper named Queen City Nerve, and we just thought it would not be worth it. But I mean, huge. It was a huge effort, and still is, to build that readership back, to make it to where our name is as recognizable as Creative Loafing's was. There's also just the fact that we have 157 people moving to the city every day. So there's so much turnover in the city where it's like there's people moving in all the time who never heard of Queen City Nerve. So it's always going to be a struggle to get our names to be that recognizable to people who aren't really locked in or plugged into the arts and culture scene in Charlotte. They might not know about what it is. And that's why it's sort of my proudest moment when I run into people at these events all the time who are like, you might like introduce me, this is the guy behind Queen City Nerve. And this person will say, oh man, I moved here 2-3 years ago, and that's what got me connected, and that's how I found my community. And that's literally why we do it.
Absolutely.
So that is like our proudest moment, and that's what we want to just keep building.
Absolutely. I feel like you might have learned your lesson from Creative Loafing, because you all are definitely a lot more hands-on with online, along with paralleling it with paper print. So was that a difficult move? Because again, like the core of it is paper print, but again, you have to have some type of digital aspect. So how was it?
There were some tent poles that we came into, which was one was going to be the hyper local fixation that came from Mark Kemp. He was the one who made that change at Creative Loafing of, we're gonna stop doing the interviews with whatever band. The Black Keys are coming into town, so we're going to interview them, and that'll be our feature story. Those definitely get a lot more read, a lot more web traffic and things like that, because people around the country are searching for Black Keys interviews. And we've thought about mixing those back in because it's so hard. You and I have had discussions about how hard it is to get people to engage with local music content if they're not in the scene themselves. But that was one of our tent poles, was the hyper local focus on throughout all sections. And then the other one, I'm sure there was 3 or 4 more that we really built on, and we said this is going to be a deal breaker. One was keeping print, but the other one, like you said, was running everyday updated website parallel with that. And it was definitely new for me. It was a struggle. We didn't, when you're covering news and things that are happening as they happen, you can't like build up an archive, especially when you have a month to do it. You can't like build up an archive and have a month worth of content scheduled to come out, because things are happening as they happen and you're catching stories as they go. So it's really just dedicating myself and my team dedicating themselves. It wasn't just a one person thing by any means. I don't want to act like that, but just really dedicating ourselves to getting content out all the time. If it's a 300, 400 word story, sometimes those are better. People don't always want to sit and read a long form piece. Just really updating the website all the time on just new shit that's going on that we don't think mainstream media is going to be covering necessarily.
Absolutely. So becoming editor in chief, how is it being in that position, in that role now, coming from interning to all the way to editor in chief?
It's interesting, man, because it's not what I wanted to do at all. When I was coming up, I just wanted to be a reporter and do the reporting and let someone edit it and worry about. I basically got into journalism for a big reason, was that I hate teamwork. Like I hate team projects.
For sure.
I don't hate teamwork. Teamwork sounds bad. I hate team projects. I just want to be left alone to do my thing and then put it out.
Got you.
I love connecting with other people. I love going to meet them where they're at. That's why I always, when I interview someone, I say, where you want to interview. I want to come where you're comfortable at, and I want to get a taste or get a glimpse at your life. And that is like my favorite part of the job. But I don't want to then bring it back to someone and work with them on it. Like I just want to have control over the narrative. So that said, I mentioned that because now as an editor, I'm a manager, and I'm managing all these different writers and what they're working on and who they're talking to, and they have questions for me. How do you think I should do this? So it's really been a learning process for me, as opposed to just being able to report, turn my story in, work with the editor. Of course, that's always going to be teamwork there. but it's just different now as far as I'm managing a lot of different people, and a lot of people rely on me as not only an editor, but also a business owner.
Absolutely.
And Justin, sort of the way we came into it was Justin takes care of all the business side of things, and I take care of all editorial content. But there's always going to be, him and I have to work together on making the business work.
100%.
So there's just so many different areas of concern that it took a huge learning curve, and it's still a learning process 8 years later for sure.
Absolutely. How difficult truly is it for a paper to be a business from your standpoint? Because apparently that was difficult for Creative Loafing to continue to do. So
it's rough, man. We've seen it all around the country with alt weeklies shutting down, and it's a struggle. It has a lot to do with perspective and sort of the way that people in the advertising world see print advertising.
Absolutely.
There seems to be like an understanding that print advertising is dead and doesn't work. Our point is convincing people that it absolutely does. When you put this paper, we have a 92% pickup rate for our newspapers.
Absolutely.
And people are reading it, and people love the print version and love having it in their hands. So you cannot deny that those ads, if you advertise in our paper, are going in front of people. It's just, what is your understanding of how they take that in? Now, it's my belief that you should be advertising on different mediums. Absolutely. Social media, maybe the radio, I don't know, depends on what your event is, all sorts of different places, but print is just another way to have it. Oh, that's in front of me again. I saw that online earlier. Like it's making an impact by just staying in front of people all the time, the way a billboard does when you're driving down the road.
Yeah, absolutely.
So print advertising still works. It's just about convincing people with an advertising budget that it does, because a lot of times what they'll do is strip down the advertising budget to then go hire a PR team who then they're paying their salaries to then pitch me stories that are free, so people go towards PR and earned media. Nowadays, most of that advertising budget is going to influencers who are going to go, pick up some food from your spot and make a TikTok out of it and eat the food on the camera. And that's your advertisement, is just to work with influencers. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think that our job, not mine, because I don't get into ad sales, and thank God, because I'm not a salesman. But the job of our sales folks are to try to convince people that we have that impact in our newsletter advertising, our online advertising, and our print advertising that goes parallel with whatever you're going to do on a social media influencer type thing.
100%. It's funny that you bring up TikTok, because as the attention spans begin to wane amongst different people for different reasons, it's print journalism definitely has that bad rap of, just outdated. Of course, obviously it's not. You guys are still doing your thing. I consistently pick up, print media, especially Queen City Nerve, on a regular basis whenever I'm around and able to do that. And of course, you all are taking your online website a portion more seriously, but we're in that day and age where it's like you have to have quick information on a regular basis, i.e. a TikTok level of just content being able to churn out. Is that something that you see Queen City Nerve getting into? Do you guys have a TikTok?
We did for a little bit. I think there might be one or two videos up there somewhere on a feed somewhere. But it is something that we would like to approach more, just the reels and the TikToks and the short form video content. We try to stay up on, our newsletter is probably our most popular thing.
Gotcha.
So that's sort of how we stay in your inbox every day and remind you of our presence. And people love to just wake up, and I leave here, I'm going to write the Monday's newsletter. That'll be one of the things that I have to do tonight. And people love to wake up to that. It's there at 7:04 every morning, and it's going to have everything that you want, from my little intro to a feature story to some of our other stories to then Talk of the Town, which is just catching you up on the news that happened over the weekend, to 3 events to do that we come out of our lifeline that we just think are worth, we sludge through the slop of the million different events that are happening, because there's a lot of cool shit going on in Charlotte on any given day. And we try to pick out the ones that we think are for our readers. So it's just sort of a one-stop shop. The newsletter is a big deal now. It's really become such a priority for all of in the journalism industry, and we take that, we prioritize that in our business as well. But yeah, to answer your question, I also have a podcast that I do. We've done 102 episodes of that. That's called News Hounds. So trying to stay up on stuff, but yeah, we just haven't really taken the taken the time to commit to having like a short form.
Gotcha.
I just personally don't have the capacity.
Yeah,
we've
it's
been
a lot,
going through like a rough year. I'll be honest with you. Some of the cuts that have gone into the arts world due to the Trump administration was one of his first moves going into office for a second term. That really just sort of it killed us in terms of advertising, because it's not so much anymore at that point about do we think print ads work? It's that if you're cutting the funding from an arts organization, and that's most of our advertising comes from the arts scene, then that's the first thing that's going to go is their advertising budget. And that really hurt us a lot. So we really had to scale back our team at the end of 2025. And we've been outward about that. And wrote an editor's note about it when we had to do it. So we're just sort of like right now back at a skeleton crew of like trying to make things happen and grow this thing back with new strategies. And that can definitely be part of it. I'm looking into creating that video content, but it's really just about time management, man. It's the toughest part of my job.
Absolutely.
It's nonstop all the time. So just finding the time to be able to do that for sure.
100%. Is that something that you guys are actively working towards? Is that on the docket right now? Okay.
For sure. Gotcha. It is a set goal for sure. 'Cause like you said, we're at the events.
Yes, exactly.
So it's not that much work for us to take the content, go to a Phase God show and just have clips. It's finding someone who has the time to then edit them into an effective little morsel.
Absolutely. Are you guys doing internships, having the ability for some of the people in the community to get more involved and help?
Yeah, we've done internships for most of the years that we've been around through Liz Rogers at CP or Cheryl Spainhour, who's my journalism professor at UNC Charlotte, another big mentor of mine. They've sent some, but it's been like a year and a half because we had to going through that tough time in 2025 with the cut of the funding. We ended up getting rid of our office that was in Dilworth, and we all sort of work remote now.
Understood.
Which you can do through UNC Charlotte. You can do remote internships. We just haven't done one yet.
Okay, understood. I got you.
Haven't got back on that yet.
I got you. Just another addition to the plan as we continue to grow and continue to do our thing with Queen City Nerve. Understood. Well, Ryan, let's go ahead. We're gonna go into our next part of our show that we call Heavy as the Crown. At this point in time, we want to know, as far as your creative journey, your journey as a editor-in-chief at Queen City Nerve, what are some of the heaviest parts of your journey, of your time, or of your day, doing your job, doing your thing that a lot of people probably won't get to see or get to experience that you want them to know a little bit more about?
Man, there's just a lot of you become jaded to a lot of the realities that you're reporting on, because I came up reporting on news, so it's not all. I know we talk a lot about arts and culture here on this show, but I also do a lot of news, and that's sort of my bread and butter as far as my reporting goes. And it's like some shit will just weigh on you in terms of like, for the last 5 years, I want to say I've kept a map of every homicide that happens in the city.
Whoa.
And I pull those out of CMPD reports, but I also I include the name and the age of the person, but I also go try to find a picture of them and go find their Facebook page or what have you to see who they really were, so they're not just a statistic. I want the very least to have a picture of each person whose life was taken in this way. And that can, like, sometimes I get way behind on that, so I'll end up spending an entire afternoon doing that, just name after name after name after scenario after Facebook page, and that shit just really weighs on you. I do the same with deadly car wrecks. I name every person in the situation they're in, and I put it in an interactive Google map so that people can see trends, why this is happening, and make some connections. And I think that's an important part. It's been used in the traffic map has been used in city council meetings. Braxton Winston has brought it up to fellow council members to sort of use it as a tool to change policies or at least, affect those sort of things. So that's why we do it. But it can just be like, it just weighs on you when you spend a whole afternoon just with community death and stuff like that. And I actually learned an important lesson about that as an intern. The very first story I ever had published was about I don't know what it's called now because the company's moving into there, but the Duke Energy Center, it looks like a lunchbox at the top. That was being built while I was an intern there. And people kept getting really seriously hurt. And it was just sort of like there was more OSHA violations and injuries there than in your normal construction site. And I had written a story about it. And one of the biggest things about weekly or biweekly feature journalism is that you're competing against breaking news outlets who are going to tell the story before you. So I came to into work one day, and I had written this long story, and I thought it was going to be my first story in the paper ever. And Kim had told me, Charlotte Observer wrote a story about it, so we're going to kill it. Wow. And it was just like, damn. So then I came to work the next day, and it said, she had a little sticky note on my computer that said, someone died at the site. We're going to run your story. And I was like, yes. And then I had to think about, what am I doing? Like, what am I celebrating here? Like, this was a real person. And obviously I had to update the story by going to try to find out more about this guy who passed. But that was really a lesson of like, it was only it took me 2 seconds to really realize, what are you thinking here? What are you celebrating? This is not about you. And I've tried to carry that on into my journalism forever, is to remember that it's not about me or me trying to get to the top or beat anybody on a story. It's about me telling human stories, because a lot of our job is extractive. We extract people's stories from them and we go tell them, and then we move on with our lives. And I might stay in touch over social media or whatnot with subjects to my stories, but for the most part, we're not keeping up on a daily basis with, I'm moving on to the next story. And I recognize the extractive nature of that. And that's why it's important for me to be respectful to just the human element of any story I'm telling. Absolutely. Not just when I meet this person, I'm respectful to them, but just the overall understanding the perspective of what I'm doing and what my role is. It's not about advancing my career. It's about, I just want to exist. I just want our business to exist so that we can share stories that need to be shared.
Absolutely.
And that keeping that perspective is important to not getting you too jaded or weighed down by it all, because it can be super depressing. Some of the stories that you're telling of just, I'm sitting in these people's houses just a month ago where they cooked me all this food because I'm a guest in their home. And I'm like, you don't know where your patriarch is, where your dad is or where your husband is. And you don't know if you're going to be in this country in a month, and this government is literally targeting you, and you're taking the time to cook me this whole spread of food. And it just, that sort of stuff humbles the hell out of me, because it can really, you're meeting with people on a regular basis who are going through maybe the worst time of their lives, and that can be stressful as hell. You just have to it gives you perspective on your own life, but it's important to just remember that, and to be honor the fact that they are letting you into that moment.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, it is probably one of the most sincerest forms of just like human connection, is just getting that story, is getting to these people, getting to know what's going on, so that we have that perspective. A lot of times there are oftentimes we'll go our entire lives and never know what anybody else is thinking, right? Unless we were able to go ahead and have that conversation, or have that ability to have journalists that can go ahead and give us that story, so that we can have that different perspective and have a different outlook on life, and not just think our one way is just the only way, right? So that's very important and very, very needed in this day and age. So, well, with that being said, Ryan, as you continue to push Queen City Nervies, you continue to formulate these stories, how can people really reach your radar as far as like stories? What are the stories that people, what's a better way to answer this, for like people that want to be in the paper, that aren't necessarily actions, like what are the things that you guys are looking for that people want to bring to you?
I just tell people to email me. We've been over this with, I don't know if I can break the fourth wall here,
by all means,
but Nick is here as a producer on this podcast. He approached me at an event at a neighborhood theater that I was speaking on a panel, and he was like, I'm doing some really cool projects that I'm working on. I'd love to be for you guys to take a look at it. He didn't apply any pressure. He's just like, I just want to share this. And he sent me along some stuff. We've done a lot of coverage on some of this 10,000 hours and whatnot that he's doing. Not only that, but he's contributed to our, as a editorially sharing some of his documentaries with us. So like, that's what people like him, like I'd love to hear about cool stuff that's going on. I'm always looking for it in my inbox. So my tip is to email me at rpitkin@qcnerv.com, and to make sure that you're saying something about Charlotte-based this or that in the subject line.
Absolutely.
Because I get a lot of people who just add me to a list, and they're in Sacramento. They're pitching stories about an album release in France or something, and I'm just trying to sift through all that to find the stories that deserve to be told in Charlotte on a cultural level. So that's the best you can do. I'm very active on my email. I'm not going to miss it. If anything, we just don't have the capacity to tell all the stories that I know that are happening. So if it does get, sometimes I brush over something and I come back to it months later, because I finally have some time and I put this away in a file, like we can tell that story at some point. But yeah, I'm always actively searching for new stories to tell. Just make sure that you're upfront in the subject line that this is a Charlotte story I'm looking to share with you.
Absolutely. 100%. Well, with that being said, let's go ahead and transition into the next part of our show that we have, the passing of the crown. Who are some of the other either creatives, entrepreneurs, other journalists that you do see in and around the area or outside of the area that you do see possibly taking the crown and pushing it, either journalism or whatever they're doing, to the next level?
Right. Journalistically, I just always have to shout out Annie Keogh, who is my news reporter for since she graduated. She was started as an intern at UNC Charlotte and then was working under me for quite some time. She sort of stepped back from her role for the time being right now, but we're hoping to bring her back as soon as possible to a more full-time role, or she's more than likely going to get a full-time writing job somewhere. But she's just a great news reporter. Pat Moran has been our music writer for a long time, and he is by far, I think, the best music writer in Charlotte. Just the way that he can lay out a story that's not just telling the story, but also like describing the music. I can't do that. Like, I don't know how he does it, but like to describe a song in print, I cannot do that. But he really just has all the context. He's been doing this a while, and the way that he writes about music is amazing. Keogh Moore is a writer who used to contribute with us back in Creative Loafing days. I think she's stepped away from writing for a little while just to focus on some of the work she had been doing in the creative community, Boom, and all sorts of different organizations. But now she's been writing for us for the first half of this year. Wow. Has contributed some really great stories, and she's really pushing back at it in a major way. And I'd love to see her do what she's doing, and I'm glad that she's doing it with us.
Absolutely.
So those are just three names right off the top of my head that I'm just excited to work with.
Absolutely. No, that's amazing. Ryan, what are your thoughts on, I guess, the next generation of current journalism as it is, of course, online, the need for quick content, quick turnover, things like that. Just what are your thoughts on just current journalism and your thoughts on incoming journalists and what they should be focusing on?
So many thoughts.
I can imagine.
But I spend my whole day thinking about this, and just we are seeing a churn in the way people tell stories with the TikToks and the short form video content. But I do think that we haven't even touched on the emergence of AI and generative AI at that, which is a real threat or just an issue to watch in the world of writing, because you can't do journalism as a generative AI.
Absolutely.
Because you can't go and learn the stories of people and how they experience them and ask them questions. You can only, generative AI, and this goes for art, film, writing, whatever, generative AI can only take what's already been created and work it out.
Reshuffle it.
Rework it. So journalism, I do think there is a threat from sort of greedy publishers who might think, oh, we can use this to generate news stories and content. But it's just not a replacement. So that's not even connected to the short form video content. I do think as someone coming up, you should be familiar with editing short form video content and sort of turning your stories into visual pieces for that level of storytelling. But the only reason I brought up the AI is because I think that moving forward, there will be a sort of a drawback from the internet in general when people are unable to tell what's real on said internet. When you can't tell if a video you're looking at is real, when you can't tell if something you're reading was created by a human being, if you can't tell when the art you're looking at, whether it's visual painting or a film, if you can't tell if that's real life, then I think people will sort of draw back and start to look more to the print product and the I don't want to call it old school journalism, but the journalism that they know that they can trust.
Exactly.
And that goes for we compare it to vinyl records and the comeback of vinyl records.
Absolutely.
And people sort of really embracing that physical medium. And we think that print is sort of, if anything, I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. But I think AI will eventually bring along sort of more of a desire to have new standards in news that the people can go to reporting outlets and reporters that they trust, that they know are telling real stories and creating real content. So that's sort of where I hope the future is going, as opposed to just slop on top of slop. Yeah. But I do have confidence that will eventually be the reaction of people to an internet where they don't know if anything's real or not.
Absolutely, I agree. Definitely, it is getting harder and harder to tell a lot between AI and what actual people are doing, and that may or may not be the point of it all. It should just confuse and kind of muddy the waters more now than ever. But again, that's why we are grateful for, of course, you, Ryan, and alternative weeklies like Queen City Nerve that can really, again, be those boots on the ground, that can be those neighbors that we know we can always reach out to. It's not just reading this paper and getting the information, but it's like, this paper was written by Ryan Pitkin, by Pat Moran, or by somebody in the city of Charlotte. If I wanted to, not in a weird way, but I could go find Ryan and speak with him, and we can have further conversations like we're doing right now, right? That's what's really important, and that's what's going to be important moving forward, as you said.
Community journalism, for sure.
Community journalism, absolutely. So with that being said, Ryan, before we get up out of here, we have to know, do you have any last thoughts, either for any incoming journalism or just people in general?
Man, I think that last rant was sort of my last thoughts.
I got you.
Moving forward in the journalism scene. But no, I just think our motto, at least one of them, but our main motto at Queen City Nerve has always been that if you don't think anything is going on in Charlotte, then you're not looking. And our main mission is to connect people with the shit that is going on, the people that are doing cool things. So it's just been a joy and an honor and a privilege to have so many people in Charlotte seeing, whether it is some of the news stories that need to be told that are darker, but even, the arts and the culture and the music, and to really connect with the scene and be led in by this culture, and who, so many people trust us to tell those stories, because they're not the local arts, grassroots sort of artists are not getting their stories told anywhere else, but to be trusted with those stories just means the world to me. So I hope that I can do this forever, because I don't know what the hell else I'm going to do.
Amen.
One way or another.
I'm saying, absolutely. No, definitely praying that you do have this forever, because you're amazing at it. I've been grateful
that.
No, for sure. I appreciate you just covering what's going on in the city, because I always feel like there isn't enough coverage of the city of Charlotte. Even within the city of Charlotte, even when you see the things that are covered, it seems really surface level. It's a lot of stuff that I feel like I'm not getting, the real deal information that I need to, unless it's coming from, a spot like Queen City Nerve or something like that. So again, grateful for you, grateful for your talents, grateful for your team and everything that you do for us here in the city of Charlotte, Ryan.
I'm grateful for you, man. That's why we always connect. That you really engage with our content. You'll hit me up on email and be like, this is why I'm creating For Artists by Artists, and we had that discussion.
Yes, sir.
Or the Averex project, all sorts of different things that you're up to, man. I just love to see it.
Listen, man, I'm grateful, and I do hope to speak with you more on upcoming adventures from you and hopefully from me. Before we get up out of here, Ryan, let us know where we can find you at, how we can stay in touch, and what we should be expecting from you.
Yeah, man, just if you need to reach me over email, it's rpitkin at qcnerve.com. I am Ryan Pitkin on Threads and Instagram, though I'm not on Instagram very often. I'm more on Threads nowadays, at Pitkin_Ryan on Twitter. And that's where I'm hanging out. And
why is that, by the way? Because you actually are on Threads. You tell people, don't find me on Instagram, I'm on Threads, and you're active on Threads. Why is that, real quick?
I just don't. I don't know. I got hooked on the Twitter for a long time, and that was sort of my medium of just short-term text, as opposed to trying to find a good visual for everything. Facts. I'm not always the best photographer.
I got you.
I literally just dedicate my whole Instagram to street murals in Charlotte.
Heavy. But
I am on there scrolling, checking what people are doing, because it's important and it's part of my job. But as far as my own Instagram account, I'm just doing street murals. So if you love street art, you can follow me. But yeah, Threads is just now that Twitter has become so Nazified, Threads was just sort of the logical next step.
Hey, man. Understood. Well, with that being said, Ryan, again, thank you so much for your time, just your ability to be here, and again, what you do for us at Queen City Nerve as a journalist, as a friend, and as a homie. We definitely appreciate you. And with that being said, this has been another episode of the Creative Crowns Talk Show. Again, much love to you, Ryan. Much love to our mislabeled gang in the back. Again, shout out Nick Will. Shout out Evan III. I've been your host, Tony P. the Phase God. Please, folks, please make sure you are tapping in with us on Instagram at creativescrown.clt. Make sure you holler at Ryan. Make sure you tap in with Queen City Nerve.
It's at Queen City Nerve on all social medias. Boom. No spaces, no underscores, just at Queen City Nerve. And
not just that, make sure you follow. Make sure you actually tap in with the actual online sources. You guys, please make sure if you are feeling giving fun. I know you guys are always, looking for crowdsourcing.
QCnerve.com/memberships.
Absolutely.
You can subscribe to the newsletter for free there if you want, or if you're in the mood for giving, like you said. That's always important.
Absolutely. This is for you guys. All right. So, folks, again, if you're trying to tap in to the city of Charlotte, tap into your media, tap into your local print, tap into the people that are talking about things, because that's the only way you're going to get heard. Right. Again, this has been the Creatives Crowns show. We love you guys. We appreciate you guys. Make sure you tap in with us next time. With that being said, love. Peace.